afternoon, everybody. Today is the yartzeit of a very controversial figure, and yet I feel compelled today to talk about him a little bit, and that's Rabbi from Kook, who was a rabbi in several different towns in Lithuania and then in Eretz Yisrael, and eventually was the rabbi of Jerusalem and the founder of what became the chief rabbinate of the state of Israel. Later in history, he made the foundations for that organization, and what later became a government body. And certainly, although I would maybe not call myself a Satmar Chassid, although I send my kids to Satmar schools, and part of my ancestry comes from Satmar, but they came here to America before Satmar Rav was here. I'm saying from the city of Satmar and Satu Mare in Hungary. They weren't Satmar Hasidim. There was no such thing as Satmar Hasidim in those days. And I don't think they were even Hasidish Yidden. They were Hungarian, Yidden, and going back and part of the Yichus to Rabbonim in Hungary, who also were not Hasidish, but essentially, my approach is that what's understood today as Hasidish, it's more along the lines of, especially among the Hungarian approaches to Hasidus, is really more of the classical Hungarian Ashkenaz approach in a certain sense. It's just that, all right, so the Daven Nusach Svar to wear a gartel. That's the major difference, and probably even the gartel might be not really have much to do with Hasidus. But obviously, anybody who's familiar with a little bit about Jewish history and so forth, they know obviously the differences between Rabbi Kook's approach and Satmar, and Rabbi Kook is a persona non grata in the Satmar community. Usually they'll just call him Kook. They won't say Rav Kook. They'll say Kook because of their contempt for him. And he was an interesting figure, to say the least, but there's been a lot of propaganda about him. A lot of outright lies have been said about him, just like the same thing with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. We know there's a German in Borough Park, a Rav Zechon Liozner Rebbe. He has the museums and Living Torah museums. He wrote a book years ago, larger than life, about all the lies that the Lubavitcher Hasidim say about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And the same thing, Rabbi Kook, Gevena Void Yid. He was an Orthodox Jew. He was, there's no, but I think there's two sides there, because on one side it was, the Kanoim, even in his time, who opposed him, the more zealous branches. And then there were his followers, or his professed followers, who also, at the very least, we could say, changed some of the truths about his history and so forth. It's not clear, really, that he would be considered what we would call today religious Zionist. That's one part. He had many statements that contradicted each other, that had been published. Some that were very, very pro-Zionist, and some that were very anti-Zionist. And what we come out from that, really, was that he suffered from a bipolar disorder. I don't see how anyone could dispute that. And when I mention that, I know a lot of people get offended by that. To me, it's how you melamed schus. That's how you show your. To me, it's showing a type of respect for him, because it's saying it's not his fault. Because clearly there were things that he said, particularly the most controversial things. For example, when he said that a secular person who's Mechal Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael is holier than a Rosh Hashiva in Chutz La'aretz. That's heresy, or very near, at least colloquial heresy. I mean, I understand there's a difference. It's a bigger heresy than saying that the Orach Chaim HaKadosh wasn't written Baruch HaKodesh. You understand what I'm saying? Meaning when the Sanzarov, he said that someone who doesn't believe that the Orach Chaim HaKadosh was written Baruch HaKodesh, that because obviously he doesn't mean it halachically speaking, Maridim V'Lamalin. I'm not going to translate all these things. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there are certain things that we can't really talk about too much in English and things. But if you read Torah, you know what I'm talking about. And meaning, basically, there are different terms that we translate heresy. And I say that there's a legal heretic, meaning someone who's really a heretic, and there are legal consequences to that heresy, that such a person should be at least excommunicated, and really there's more than that. And then there's a colloquial heretic, right? or meaning that if someone adopts a colloquial heresy, it might be a sign of an actual heresy, And that's what I'm saying here, is that to say that a person in the Holy Land who is anti-religious is holier than a pious Torah scholar outside the Holy Land, there's an obvious issue there, and it's obviously a evocative or provocative statement. Is this recording? Yes. Okay. So, if we're saying that it's not his fault because he had a mental illness, that means that he could still be a tzaddik and Talmud Chacham. And that's how I was taught from a person that I looked up to, that I knew, even though he was actually a prison inmate, way back in the day when I was a Rav down in Virginia. I was also a chaplain, just a Jewish chaplain then in the prison. Now I'm a chaplain who oversees all the faiths in my current position. One of my full-time current position. I have a part-time Jewish chaplaincy position as well. But there was somebody who was a Rosh Hashiva, and unfortunately he was an inmate in the prison. And he told me, and he's from the soccer community, and he said that when you see the mental illness, the bipolar disorder that Rabbi Kook obviously suffered from, then it would lead us to say that he was a tzaddik, and he was a Talmud Chacham. He was a pious person. He was a saint. He was a scholar. However, there's no way of knowing which of these statements coming from a place of mental health or a place of mental illness. Which one is the manic and which one is the depressive? And so therefore, you have this issue with this statement. So that's and they say that one of the Gera Rebbes visited Rabbi Kook, and Rabbi Kook he asked him about this statement, other statements they made that were very controversial. So the Gera Rebbe reported to Samarov that Rabbi Kook told him that he regretted making those statements. So then the Samarov, in his inimitable, with his sense of humor, in his style, he said he should have said these foolish statements that he said that are borderline heretical privately, and he should have apologized publicly. Instead, he apologized privately and made the statements publicly, published them, and so forth. So, but with that being said, again, I remember Rabbi Victor Miller, they asked him about Rabbi Kook, and he said he was a poetic soul. But the problem was that he sometimes crossed certain lines. I remember, when I was a bacher, I saw two bachrim talking, a Belzer and a Satmar. So Satmar had geherd, a Belzer Zachat Zioini, right? So he asked the Belzer bacher, he said, in your yeshiva, do you learn Rav Kook's Sfarim? He said, no. So then this bacher asked his father, what's happened with Rav Kook? He said, in Belz we wouldn't touch Rav Kook because he said a prayer, the invocation at a college. And so if we're against the college, that's why we're against Rav Kook, not about science. So everybody has their thing, right? But here I'm a college boy, first of all, right? So I can't have a problem about that. Although the truth is, Rabbi Victor Miller also went to college, and he said people should go to college. And Lubavitcher Rebbe, he went to college. He also said people should go to college. So, but and also the nafka minute was, all right, Rabbi Victor Miller went to YU, and Lubavitcher Rebbe went to secular colleges together with. He went to Berlin and the Sorbonne, and in Berlin he was also with Rabbi Soloveitchik and with Rav Hutner. Rav Hutner was a Talmud of Rav Kook. He learned by Rav Kook, and he had a very strong kesher to Rav Kook. So, you have these different approaches. So and also I went to Touro College. I didn't go to a secular college. I got a secular degree. I got a bachelor's degree in psychology, but it's not so and Rav Kook never went to college, and he himself he often argued that people misrepresent some of his statements, like when he was asked to say a hesped for Herzl. And so he didn't mention Herzl at all in the hesped, right? he was talking about different inyanim, and he didn't mention Herzl. So anyway, I'll tell you though. This is what I have to say. Maybe my wife's going to be upset at me for saying this, because I know my wife's a big Satmar. But I had the Rabbi in high school, Moshe Weinberger, everybody knows. He was a big fan of Rav Kook. And he says he's said a shir for 20 years every week in this form of Rav Kook. So this is what I grew up with, a little bit. And Rabbi Weinberger's not like a religious Zionist, he's not, doesn't say Hallel on Hayir, he doesn't wave an Israeli flag. In his shul they don't say Reishis Smichas Kulasenu or Medinas Yisrael or anything. But a lot of his followers, a lot of his students are very, very strong religious Zionists. Some, like me, are not. And I'm not such a big chassid of Rabbi Weinberger, but I was a student of his. And I appreciate what he accomplished for me and how he helped me. But I'll tell you something. I speak all the time about the respect I have for the other religions, right? I like to listen to Fulton Sheen and to Alan Watts and, this one and that one that are other religions. So if I can listen to them and agree to disagree and find some wisdom in their words without, and I love Stephen Greer also, not even organized religion, but somewhat of a type of a cult leader a little bit, right, in a small way, even though he's not. But I still am a big fan. I might not agree with everything he says. Certainly, of course, don't agree with everything that Bishop Fulton Sheen said or believed, or Alan Watts or any other. Meir Kahana is a Yid, from a Yid. Don't agree with everything he said. I love him. Believe him in Nefesh. I think he was wrong about a lot of things. I still love him. And Rav Kook, it's harder for me to love, but I still love him, and he's growing on me a little bit more. And one thing, and again, these are the types of things that the Haredi world don't like about him. And even though he spoke about his disagreements with other religions, he lived in peace, in harmony, in love with the people of other religions. And that's the thing that I saw a video someone posted, Rabbi Yaakov Klein, who runs the Lost Princess Initiative, and he's a very close student of Rabbi Weinberger. And Rabbi Klein, he posted on Facebook a video, old film, newsreel footage with Rabbi Kook. And we've all seen the one that's been up for a long time with Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, Chusik Aleinu, and Rabbi Kook. And they say also, although it's hard to see in the picture, Winston Churchill was also there, because he was governor of Mandate Palestine. So that video, that was interesting to see. So then there was another film that we've seen for 20 years already. It's on my YouTube channel. That one with Rabbi Yosef Chaim. But the other video that came out, I hadn't seen before. it had him speaking to some other distinguished-looking gentlemen with beards and black robes and different types of hats. And I wrote to Rabbi Klein. I said, "Tell me, are those Sephardic Chachamim, or are they Russian Orthodox priests?" And he said, "I think they're the latter." And the way he was talking to them, you could see. He was like kibitzing with them. He was like buddies with them. It wasn't this cold, calculated, business-like approach that we generally will see when a frum person has to interact with really any non-Jew, in general, especially like a real Haredish. This is Aid from the Heim, Borden Pius, and Kolpik, and the Bekesha, and he's comfortable. He looks friendly talking to these priests like he's talking to his buddies. And I really appreciated that. Because you can agree to disagree. There was a thunder, a lightning bolt. I saw first a Regenbogen, and it was like right in front of me. It was like going around my car. It wasn't out in the distance, but it also made the bracha on that, because first I thought it was regular, but I saw the whole arc, keshes, so that's what I have to share. I'm going to stop now. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. And we'll see you all later.